Hey everyone! Today I would like to share some neat tricks and shortcuts that I believe to be essential when starting out in Photoshop. Please see the description under the video for essential keyboard shortcuts. And in the video I will be covering how I apply my basic color texture and how to achieve clean, seamless line art. So let's begin. This is a piece that I created just for fun a while back. I will be using this to demo textures and colors. So let me just start hiding some layers here. This is an overlay layer that I was using to get some more texture on there, get some more grip. This is a multiply layer. I used it to achieve additional texture and to get that sort of plant type stuff in the background. These are just some weird things that I added on a normal layer. This is a lighten layer. As you can see, I use that to kind of tone down the background a little bit more. This is overlay. I used that to get more highlights and to get more vibrance on my foreground. And this is just a color burn. And I used this to get my two main tones onto the picture. If I hide that, you will see that my original layer is just my grayscale rendering. What I can actually do, if I change this to, let's say, multiply, you will see the colors that I set underneath it. I can even drag this down and change it to a normal layer. And as you can see, it looks a bit different than if I had it sitting on top. Let's change it back to color burn. Yeah. So I believe that in certain scenarios, putting the color on top is actually more useful than putting it on the bottom. Because as you can see, now the effects that we get won't be as vibrant. Everything's more toned down because we've put the colors underneath this multiply. I found that this method actually really works well for characters though and creatures as well. And it doesn't hurt to take it to like either side, really. I'm just going to put these back on top now. I preferred it there. Change this back to normal. Change this back to color burn. Much better. So yeah, the way that I actually add color, I'll show you right now. This is Colorus. It's a really neat tool that I recently purchased. It's really cheap. It's like $10. And it has, if you look up here, it has different options. Here's the single selection. Here you get the complementary colors, and you can move this around. So you get both selections of complementary colors. Here you've got 3 that work really well in conjunction with one another, and you can individually move these around. If you move the larger one, it moves them all at the same time. Selection of 4, selection of 3 again. So you see there are a lot of different ways that you can use that. You can flip that around. You can change it to this version, although I don't know why you would. Or you can use the square version instead of the triangle version, but I prefer the triangle. It makes more sense. I'm just going to put it back. Yeah. Let's put it back to complementary colors because I'm just putting in the basic colors. So let's pick, let's say red. I've got the, what is this tool called? Gradient tool. It's funny, I use these tools every day, but I don't know what they're called. So I'm using the gradient tool, and I'm going to try overlay this time. And I'm just going to put in my 2 basic tones. And now that I look at that, I'm not really digging how it looks. I'm just going to try some different layer options. And if you use your arrow keys once you've selected a layer option, you can just flip right through them. Just what I'm doing right now. I'm not really digging any of them. But I do kind of like color burn. Although I think that we could definitely improve the tones that we've got in there. So what I would recommend is to switch from your round brush at this point to a more textured brush. Just something a little bit more interesting. And to also turn your opacity down. And add layers as needed. So you can see immediately how that allows you to have a lot more control over how you add color to your grayscale piece. I very rarely paint in color to begin with. I start off grayscale and then I add color. And then I just play around with it until I get the sort of effect that I want. I can actually flip to my other color here. Make sure that I have this selected. Flip back again. So I'm about to move over this way. Just want to make sure that I don't lose the perfect complementary color for that. For when I start working on the farther background in the sky. So I'm going to flip to that and test it out. It's not really making much of a difference. I'm going to turn up my opacity and see what it does. Okay, that adds some more texture to the background as well. Some more values, but I don't really like how it's turning out. So I think I'm going to want to go lighter. There we go. Add some clouds back there. And add some more variety. Tone that down back there. So yeah, that's basically how I get my colors in. Now for texture, you can either add your textures pretty much the same way, just right on top, using textured brushes. So here's a leafy brush that you can use that I really like for adding textures. See how that and again, play around with different layer options. The multiply was probably the best one. Start erasing some of that out. This is probably the harder way of doing it. It's a lot faster if you have a texture already prepared. See, I mean, like that allows you to add some grit. I actually really like that brush. Let's try this one too. Oh yeah, I've used this one before. So it's just adding and erasing, until you've built up some sort of texture that you like. Another thing that you can do though, I'm just going to hide that. I prepared this quick texture here. I'm going to tone it down a little bit. And yeah, there we go. And now I'm going to take this. Whoops. I'm going to take that and drop it on top of my other image. So I'm going to need to resize because my texture was a different size, so it doesn't fit perfectly. So I press Ctrl T. I'm just dragging it up. And you can play around with it until you get to where you're happy. And obviously I don't want a lot of texture over the background, but this is just to show how I drop textures in. And of course at this point, what I would do is lock that in, create a layer mask, and that's down here. Make sure that this layer is locked. Make sure that you're on the mask and not the original color. Black takes away. It acts like the eraser. But what's neat is because this is just a layer mask, you can bring it back by flipping to the other color. So you just flip back and forth between black and white. And again, black is basically the part that acts like the eraser, and white brings it all back in. And it doesn't matter what kind of brush you're using, it's going to bring back the exact same image that you masked. So I could switch to a different brush and it would still do the same thing, pretty much. So I'll show you right now. You can bring it back in. It's all brought back in. Take it back out. Bring it back in. So you can use different brushes when you're doing that to add more variety in the texture. And another neat thing that you can do is create a clipping mask. This isn't really the sort of place where I would use that in this sort of piece, but you can use this in other pieces. I'm just going to paint like a temporary little man figure. Just really quickly there. Obviously that's not what we want, but for this little quick thing I'm going to show you where that's what we're going to use. Oh, right. So right now I'm working at a very small size, but usually what I do is I size my canvas up. So I go to image size. Make it about 3000 pixel height. So when you create a clipping mask, I would suggest creating a new group just for that. Ctrl J to duplicate your layer, right click, create clipping mask, and then what you're going to do is drag another layer in between, drag it on top. I might be doing this the long way, to be honest. Like maybe you don't even need this. Maybe you don't need to duplicate that layer. Maybe it's enough to just have the blank layer. I don't know. This is something that I learned from a coworker back in the day. So what that allows you to do is draw or drop images and textures right into just that shape that you made in black. And I do recommend making sure that it's completely black because that's what gives you the best results when working with a clipping mask. So you see what I mean? It's just staying in that figure. And what I can even do is, like, let's say I select a part of this, copy merged, drag that right in there on top. You see, you can drag images right in there. Control T. So it's just a really neat sort of effect that you can play around with. And I do find it to be really useful. I actually used this recently when creating some splash screen images for the front page of a website that I'm working on. So yeah, that's basically it. I mean, it's actually really quite simple to get color and texture. I'm going to move on to the line art. So here, you can just ignore the background, but these are textures I created by using textured brushes from that same brush set that I found on DeviantArt. And this is just my character sketch. We're going to knock that down. I actually tried creating another demo last night where I was doing the line art. So there's that. I can actually expand that and you'll see I filled in some of that lighter line art there just so that when I go to color her face, see if I show you that layer where I was already using the fill, that it doesn't spill outside of that area. You need to make sure that all of your lines lock together, because otherwise the color will go everywhere. And this is just a layer I created for adding shading. So like if I want to mimic cell shading. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I'm just going to create another group and another layer. Go back to black for the line art. Go to the pen tool. And select where you want your control points. I'm going to change it a little bit from my original sketch. And then you right click, stroke path. You can simulate pressure, and what that does is, oops, you know what? This is actually a really good thing that I had it on a different brush. So the pen tool depends on, like, basically the lines it makes depends on what brush you had selected prior to using it. So make sure that you switch it to something that you actually can use for line art. And what I do when I do that is knock the spacing all the way down so that I get a nice dense line. And that's about the size I want for the liner, I think. So let's just try that again. Stroke path, simulate pressure. There you go. If I delete the path, you can see what that did. It tapered the lines. So you can actually control the liner very easily by using the pen tool. I'm just going to undo by pressing ctrl Z. And I'm going to undo that. And what I'm going to do this time instead is stroke path, take down the simulate pressure. And what that does is, I'm just going to delete the path again. As you can see, that created a thicker line that is the same thickness all the way from beginning to end. So that's typically what I use for the body. For the hair, I prefer using the tapered edges, although I do want to have more control over where it tapers, so I might, take a while in deciding where my control points are, deciding how many stretches of liner I decide to do in one go, because it will always taper, the first half and the last half, and in the middle it's going to be thicker. So you just need to keep that in mind when you're doing the liner. And this is, I find it to be, sometimes slower, sometimes faster than drawing it by hand, but I can show you why. I'm going to create another layer again. I decided to do it this way, and I only found this method last week on YouTube, because when I do it by hand, as you can see, it's nice and everything, but it's not perfect. And I wanted to get, compare the liner here to the liner here. It's fairly obvious that this one's cleaner and more professional looking. So we're going to go back here again and stroke path, simulate pressure. Okay. Delete. And something that was suggested on the tutorial that I watched was to create a new layer for each section that you do. That way, if you make mistakes, you can easily fix it. You can just merge the layers down afterwards. So I'm just going to do her other eye here. When you're tweaking, you just move to the convert point tool. I think I did that without even thinking. It just becomes habit and muscle memory, just like with drawing. So it takes almost no time at all to get used to it. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. You can easily move points around as well by pressing Control and holding it and moving the point by clicking on it. And you can tweak these easily as well. You're not really locked in. You can always press undo, and you can always right click and delete the layer path if delete path if it wasn't working out for you. There. And there's actually no reason that you can't change the size of the lines for each section. They're never locked in. You can change it as you go. It just becomes second nature. The pen tool's only really scary the first time you use it, but after that first time, you'll see, it becomes really, really, really awesome. I think that's a good shape for her nose. And what that did is it created a really thin line, and it didn't even show this last part here. So I'm going to go Control Z, and I'm going to just go over it again. Darken it up. Stroke path. Third time, delete path. And see, that created a really really thin line that I had to actually strengthen up a bit. So tons of control, very smooth, clean lines that make it really easy for you to be able to fill it and color it. So even though I already have color fill, and actually I recommend moving the color groups below. So I'm just going to do that. Put them into their own group and drag them under the line art. Make sure you name it. All right. So now it's underneath the line art there. It looks really creepy without her irises filled in, but it's okay. I create new layers when I'm adding color. I'm just going to make her eye whites, and I'm not going to make it perfectly white. And this is one of those parts where I do put it in, like draw it in by hand. Although if I wanted to, I could make a temporary line to close off her eye. I think I like it lighter, actually. Yeah. So I just locked that layer in to allow me to color only the part that I already put down for her eyes. And yeah, so there's that. This, what I actually did was I just copied, ctrl J, that layer, changed it to multiply. You can lock it, change the color so that instead of her regular skin tone, you pick something else. Like, let's try blue, for example. And I guess you could do something like that, but I usually don't. I just make it all one color, one tone. Create a layer mask, hide all of it by using the black one. You hide it. Remember that works as the eraser. Flip it back to white, and bam. Insta shading. This is probably not how I would normally do it, but I'm just trying to do a quick demo, so it's fine for that. And you can sort of start to bring that back in and decide how to do the shading. And what's really great about using this method is that if you make mistakes, you can very, very easily fix it. See if I just flipping back to that mode. And then you're taking away again. And there's probably an easier way to do the cell shading as well, but this is the method that I use. Don't know of any other methods right now, currently. So, yeah, that's just basically how you accomplish that. So let me know in the comments below if you have any questions on anything that I did during this video, or if you have any questions about how I achieve the look of certain pieces that I have posted on, for example, DeviantArt. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. I think I covered most of it in this video, though. This is basically the method that I use for everything. All right, so thank you very much for watching, and I hope that you found this tutorial video helpful.